Let's begin. Completing an action plan for the 1% cap. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for taking your time to join us today. Today's webinar is provided to give districts above the 1% rate in alternate assessments assistance with completing an action plan. First, I'll provide a brief overview of some of the ESSA requirements for AAS, or alternate assessments based on alternate achievement standards, to better understand the action plan. ESSA states that IEP teams must use state guidelines to determine each student's eligibility to participate in alternate assessments. The department collected data through district-wide identification in Synergy/NEO to calculate our current participation rate. Each state over the 1% cap must provide oversight of any district that submits information about exceeding the 1% to the U.S. DOE. Waiver Authority Section 8401 allows states to submit a request to the Secretary to waive this regulatory requirement. Should Maine exceed the 1% cap, we will need to apply for a waiver. ESSA also tells us that a state must make a district's justification for exceeding the 1% available to the public, as long as it does not reveal identifiable student information. A request for a waiver for exceeding the 1% cap must be submitted 90 days before the first testing window. Our first testing window opens December 1st with PAPE Science. A waiver submission in Maine must be completed by December 1st and therefore dictates our timeline. In compliance with ESSA regulations, Maine has developed an annual plan. All of you have identified the anticipated students that will participate in the alternate assessment through Synergy/NEO. After calculation of the student data, notifications were sent to all districts that exceeded an anticipated rate of more than 1%. Many districts looked over the participation guidelines to reassess their students and made determination changes through IEP meetings or amendments. The department has developed a PD for the participation guidelines that will be introduced at the MADSAC conference on Thursday, October 31st, called Understanding the Participation Guidance. Should Maine need to apply for a waiver, the department will need to provide the data on the number and percentages of students in each subgroup participating in alternate assessments. We must strive to continue to be proactive to keep the identification of students participating in alternate assessments below 1%. This being said, should Maine identify more than 1% of our students as alternate assessments in 2020, we need to increase the participation of all students, particularly students with disabilities. During the spring 2019 administration, 93.63% of students with disabilities participated in ELA. 93.58% participated in math, and 90.21% participated in science. We must increase these numbers should Maine need to apply for a waiver. If participation rates do not increase, we will not be able to apply for a waiver, and another condition could be placed on our Title I funds. A waiver must also include a plan and timeline to improve our implementation of the participation guidelines at IEP meetings and provide additional support to address disproportionality. Districts that have been placed in the Tier 3 support group will receive subgroup information. With a more in-depth, deeper dive into your data, you may be able to look at your students more carefully to either add to your action plan or strengthen your justifications. Strong justifications will strengthen and assist Maine in receiving a waiver. ESSA states that states must adopt guidelines for IEPs to use when making determinations. Maine's participation guidelines must be used for all alternate assessments, including MSAA, PAPE, and alternate access for ELS. The participation guidance documents provides a signature page should districts want to incorporate a more official document. You may go to the MSAA website provided above or contact me for your own copy of the guidance and/or the guidelines. Each district above the 1% threshold received an action plan template with the past 3 years' data that your district incurred during the spring assessment so far for 2017, 2018, and 2019. This data was presented to provide a look at your individual trends. The last column is your estimated or projected identification and participation for the 2020 school year, or your October 4th data if you received a recent action plan. Number 1 of the action plan asks you to state what you feel your district is able to reduce your current participation by. Responses may include an increase or a decrease by a certain percentage, or that you may remain the same. Please remember that your justification and action plan will explain your goal. Number 2 asks you to justify your current percentage rate and a summary of progress you have been able to make. Justifications for each district may vary, and here are a few examples. All students participating in alternate assessments meet the 3 criteria of the participation guidelines. This is one justification that I hope all districts will be able to use. Some might say, N size of the district is small. An identification of 1 or 2 students has put our district over 1%. Our district has a self-contained program that brings many students to our district. There's a nursing or a group home in our district that raises the 1% identification. Our high school has a large population of alternate assessment students this year. Number 3 is your actual action plan. Please note the clarification of measurable actions that you feel your district can achieve within an annual timeline. I've given some suggestions of what you may include. All districts should include using the participation guidelines to make the determinations at annual IEP meetings for each student. 2, teachers provide evidence such as formal and informal assessment results, progress monitoring data, and curriculum instructional objectives, student information to assist with determinations. The district will review all students performing within the above state expectations on the alternate assessments. IEP members will participate in participation guidelines, professional development. The district will review the IDEA identification of students participating in alternate assessments. And last, the district will review subgroup information to clarify areas of disproportionality. Number 4, clarifications for disproportionality is asked for you to explain. Might there be more students participating at a particular grade level? Do you have a greater percentage of English learners or students identified as emotionally disturbed, autistic, or speech language? The department has looked deep into the data for all districts. Those above 2% participation in alternate assessments will be contacted to assist you with this data. Other districts interested may also contact us. Here are some other examples of comparisons. English learners are 1.6 times more likely than non-EL students to participate. African American students are 1.7 times more likely than non-African American students. Students who are economically disadvantaged are 2.8 times more likely than students who are not economically disadvantaged. Male students are 2.0 times more likely than female students. A deeper dive into your data may show something like this. Number 5 is a new portion of the action plan this year. Please mark either yes or no to indicate the IDEA identification of students in your district that participate in alternate assessments. All rows should be marked either yes or no. Do not provide actual student numbers. Looking at this table will provide you and the department a better picture of students identified in the 1%. Examples that may require a further look are students with visual impairments or speech and language. Are those students identified correctly? Should they be identified as multiple disabilities? Should these students be participating in alternate assessments? Number 6 of the action plan is also new this year. Students that participate in alternate assessments have significant impairment in both intellectual abilities and adaptive behavior. Will the 1% students in your districts have a post-secondary outcome that will be impacted and likely to require supported or assisted living? Is this an area you will look at and include in your action plan? Number 7 provides an opportunity for you to ask for further assistance. The professional development webinar for participation guidelines will be available and distributed to all districts after the presentation at the MADSAC conference at the end of this month. Lastly, number 8 asks how parents are included in the determination for their students to participate in alternate assessments. Look at what the general assessment offers. Can any of your students access the assessments using any or all of these tools, supports, or accommodations? Do your students need to participate in the alternate assessment? Here I've listed many of the supports and accommodations. You will also find a full list on the General Assessment website provided at this URL. And so I'm going to very briefly read some of them. Online computer tools, supports, and accommodations. Accommodations, text-to-speech, color contrast, scribe, read aloud, and sign language.